Warner Brothers probably spent over $100 million making this movie. For that money, you could have taken 400 million turns on the original game. Puts things in perspective. I should probably explain the context of that joke. See, Rampage is based on a classic arcade game from the 1980s, and back then, one turn usually only cost you a quarter. That probably still sounds kinda alien, I'm realizing, if you're under 25, right? Okay, so, back before they were these massive open-world things that you played over the internet in order to have enraged arguments with 12-year-old racists, video games were relatively smallish things that you played for fun in places called video arcades. And quarters were a denomination of coin, which was a kind of money. That was a thing we used for currency before we switched over to imaginary internet data points algorithmically farmed on graphics cards by scary dudes who think they're married to Japanese cartoon characters and haven't seen the sun in a while, but are billionaires on an Excel spreadsheet for some reason. And the sun. That was this burning ball of gas at the center of our solar system, and it made it light out during the daytime, which was a time of day back when we had... Look, the world is a complicated place right now. I don't know exactly when this video is going to air, so I'm just trying to cover my bases for whatever things are like in the States when this finally does run. Yeah. By the States, of course, I mean the United States, which was this country located in the landmass between Canada and Mexico, which today you may know as... So mad scientists invent chemicals that turn regular animals into monster animals, because why wouldn't you do that? And there's a crocodile and a wolf and a monkey and they attack Chicago and the army wants to blow them all up, but The Rock is there and he goes, "No, that monkey is my best friend, so if you let me go talk to him, I can get him to be good and fight the other two and save everyone." And that's what they do, and it's awesome. Yeah. Okay, so I should be able to just leave it there, and I really kind of want to, but I can't. Plus, I also can't not just enjoy basking in the payoff of all this. I mean, I've spent well over a decade watching my once-beloved video games industry balloon itself into this unrecognizable, shambling monstrosity of a thing, trying to churn out bloated, bloom-lit, overdeveloped, hyper-textured, aimlessly content-engorged cinematic experiences, which then become bomb after colossal bomb when adapted into actual cinema, no matter how many Oscar nominees they keep throwing at them. And now, what is far and away the best movie based on a video game ever made, low bar admittedly, certainly the best since Silent Hill 12 years ago or Mortal Kombat 23 years ago. 23 years, holy shit. Comes to us not born from any overproduced AAA cinematic offering, but a nearly plotless 1986 quarter muncher from Data East. Remember when someone thought Assassin's Creed should be a movie and Michael Fassbender was in it? They tried to make Hitman twice. We still haven't had a Zelda movie. Did you see that last Tomb Raider? Not according to the box office, I realize. I'm sorry, guys. It's just we get justice so seldom, I almost forget what it feels like. Anyway, I'm actually not even joking. Rampage is kind of awesome. It's a giant monster movie very much on par with the likes of Kong Skull Island from last year in terms of being an old-fashioned B-movie that's very honest with itself and intrinsically gets that monster movies are essentially anthropomorphic disaster films, and adds the ever-welcome presence of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who I have to assume is here at least in part because if you're an actor who wants to run for president someday, you have to make a monkey movie. No, look it up. The thing with The Rock is he's got the same good instincts that Schwarzenegger did back in the 90s. He gets that no matter what the actual rating of your action film is, kids are fundamentally the backbone of the blockbuster scene, and he leans hard into it whenever the opportunity presents itself. So even though Rampage doesn't look like a family movie, what with all the military hardware, gunplay, extreme monster-on-monster violence, people getting stomped, citywide destruction, gratuitous bad guy munching, it's still a movie about a zookeeper who likes animals and is therefore good good, trying to protect his gorilla friend from villains who are mean to animals and therefore bad. Now, the hook they've come up with to make this all work, as well as it's going to work, is that the bad guys are doing their illegal turn animals into monsters for some reason mad science experiment, actually referred to as Project Rampage, in a space station, but it blows up and scatters the monster stuff all over the Earth, making 3 random giant mutants whom said evil corporation is causing to converge on their Chicago skyscraper headquarters by way of a monster homing signal in order to collect their intellectual property. Sure, why not? But one of the monsters is a rare albino silverback gorilla named George, who's followed by Johnson as his best friend zookeeper and Earth's most muscle-bound animal rights crusader, who's just trying to convince the military that he can use sign language to talk George down from the aggression caused by the monster chemical stuff. Now, as excuses to turn the entirety of Act 3 into the most expensive-looking recreation of a cheap 1980s arcade game ever, i.e. what feels like a solid 15 to 20 minutes of 3 giant monsters climbing buildings, punching buildings, knocking over buildings, beating up tanks and planes, squashing people, fighting each other, and generally doing, you know, the dozen or so things you did to get points and keep playing for longer in Rampage, it pretty much works. And the movie leading up to it is a lot of fun in its own right, because if you're going to hang a B movie on one single emotional beat, The Rock would like you to please stop hurting his gorilla friend isn't a bad one to go with. As far as the rest of it goes, Naomie Harris holds her own as the good scientist who has to make all of this made-up science stuff sound real. Jeffrey Dean Morgan gets to strut around and do exposition with a goofy cowboy accent as the government guy. Malin Ackerman gives great bad guy as the evil science corporate lady and gets rewarded with an all-time classic exit. George the gorilla is a great character. He's played in part by a motion capture actor named Jason Lyles, and The Rock really sells their on-screen chemistry, so when it finally comes down to the 2 of them versus the other 2 monsters in the ruins of Chicago, I mean, yeah, it's cartoonishly absurd spectacle, but it seriously works, and there's real stakes there beyond just how cool it is. You want the good guys to win, you don't want the ape to get hurt. Look, there's no way this should be as good as it is, and yet here we are. Now look guys, you can believe me or not, I know plenty of people cannot process the idea that giant monsters or classic video games could be turned into good, possibly great movies in their own right, but yeah, I'm not kidding. I'm giving Rampage 3.5 stars. It is awesome. Best video game movie ever made, possibly The Rock's best action film overall. I honestly hope we get like 5 more of these, or maybe just have George fight that big shark from The Meg. They actually called it The Meg.